Okay. Welcome, guys. Happy Friday. Yes, I am back. I wasn't here last Friday. I've been incredibly busy, actually. But I am back and welcome. Welcome to the Savvy Sab Show on RBN. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Now, we have some interesting stories to discuss tonight. They are not related, but I think they do tend to have a common theme. So tonight we are discussing this story over here to the left. You'll see Brianna Joy Gray and Mehdi Hasan, and you'll also see Lee Fong. That's an interesting story. So that is in reference to Mehdi Hasan plagiarism. So yes, someone who has been calling out other journalists like Matt Taibbi for not doing their due diligence, has actually not been doing his own due diligence. So we're going to get into that discussion. And we're also going to talk about this particular story with this 6-year-old girl who was shot by her neighbor. Now, luckily, she did survive. We're going to get into that story, and I'm going to explain to you what I think the overall problem is. So shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And let's go ahead and get started. So I want to say hello to a couple of people in the chat. What's going on? Bryce says almost about that time, Sabby time. Welcome, Bryce. Shout out to Eric T. Red, giving a thumbs up to Bryce. What's going on? Where he says, hey, everybody. Greetings. I eat paste. That is an interesting name. Says, what's up, comrades? Greetings, Silver Surfer sends peace, love. And I think that's the Star Trek symbol. Shout out to you as well. Okay, let's get into the story about this 6-year-old girl who was shot by her neighbor. You know, it was just a couple of days ago. I covered the story about the teenage boy, the 16-year-old boy who went to a gentleman's house to pick up his brother. Unfortunately, he went to the wrong house. He rang the doorbell, and that 80-something-year-old gentleman decided to shoot him in the face. Now, he did live, he did survive, and that gentleman has been arrested. We have a similar, somewhat situation where the person who was shot, the victim here, did indeed survive. And this time, it's not someone who's a teenager. It is actually a 6-year-old girl. And you have to ask yourself this question: who on earth would shoot a child? Let's get into it. I want to get started with this article here, and then we're going to move on to the storyline from the 6-year-old girl, because like I said, she did survive, and there was an interview with her. So I want to get into that interview as well. The 24-year-old man accused of shooting a 6-year-old girl, her parents, and another neighbor after a basketball rolled into his yard in North Carolina is now in police custody. Robert Singletary appeared in court on Friday and signed an extradition waiver. He turned himself in on Thursday to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Tampa. So they were looking for him. After this incident was reported, they were actually on the hunt to find him. So let's go on here. And here's a picture of the shooter here. Neighbors told ABC News Charlotte affiliate WSOC that the shooting on Tuesday started when a basketball rolled into Singletary's yard from a group of local children playing basketball in the street. Singletary allegedly fired a gun at a neighbor before approaching a father and daughter, William James White and 6-year-old Kinsley White, who were both seriously wounded. Now, I want to go ahead and let you know I'm familiar with this area. I've actually already reached out to friends of mine that live in the Charlotte area. Yes, they have heard of this story. It's alarming, very much alarming. The fact that someone would shoot you because your ball rolled into their yard, you know, and I want you to think about the big picture here. I don't want you to just focus on this particular incident, because the big picture in this case and the case before with the 16-year-old boy, and there was another case with a young woman who was also shot. by a homeowner in upstate New York because they were turning in their driveway to turn around is the fact that we do not trust our neighbors in this country. We have a media network that has convinced us that our neighbors are the enemy, that we're supposed to fear one another, and that we're supposed to trust the politicians. They want you to trust people that you don't even see half the time. They want you to trust people who don't even want to shake your hand unless they're trying to get a vote. They want you to trust people who don't even know you until it's time for them to get reelected and they need donations. But they don't want you to trust your neighbor, especially if your neighbor has a different political ideology than you. This is on purpose. And this points to another thing that I've brought up before multiple times on the show. We do not have community here in this country. If you look at people that live in some of these other countries like India or like China, different countries abroad, where they have actual communities, where the people in the community know each other, where the people in the community actually work together and help each other out. We don't have that for the most part in this country. And that is a big problem. Big problem. Now, one point in time, it was that way, but it hasn't been that way, at least my adult life. Let's go on with this story. One woman was grazed by a bullet and a second man was shot at, but not injured. William White remains in serious condition. Now, that's according to police. Why did you shoot my daddy and me? Why did you shoot a kid's dad? Now, that's coming from the little girl, Kinsley, who was shot. Family members said William White tried to draw gunfire toward himself to protect his family as Singletary unloaded an entire magazine toward his neighbor. So an entire magazine, that means with the rifle, the gun that he used. That's a lot. So he fired a lot of rounds. White was shot in the back in his own yard, according to his partner, Ashley Hildebrand. He looked at my husband and my daughter and told them, "I'm going to kill you." Just point blank. Singletary is charged with 4 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon, and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. In December, Singletary was separately charged with assaulting his girlfriend with a mini sledgehammer. Jesus. Leading her to bleed profusely from the back of the head and forcing her inside an apartment for 2 hours. So this is someone who has a history of violent behavior. The victim further stated that Singletary told her that she could not leave until she had cleaned up all the evidence from the assault. I want to say to people of Gaston County, this sort of violence will not stand. That's coming from Gaston County Police Chief Stephen M. Zill. The North Carolina shooting follows a string of similar incidents where seemingly ordinary mistakes have led to serious consequences involving firearms. Over the last week, 2 cheerleaders in Texas were shot after entering the wrong car in a parking lot. A woman in New York was killed after entering the wrong driveway, and a 16-year-old in Missouri was shot after ringing the doorbell to the wrong home. We really have to ask ourselves, what is happening in this country? And I don't believe all of these situations are mental health issues. I just don't believe that. I think that people in this country have a lot of anger. America is known to be a very violent country. But the fact of the matter is, we don't trust each other in this country. That's a big part of the problem. Now, how do you fix that? Because we need to talk about possible solutions. Number one, sometimes every now and then you have to turn off mainstream media. Mainstream media will have you hating people that you love. Mainstream media will have you, not trusting people that you've had no problem trusting before. They will convince you that your neighbor is your enemy, when in reality, you should have some type of camaraderie with your neighbors. You should be working together with people in your neighborhood. You guys should not be working against each other. So people have a lot of fear. This is not to make an excuse, But there have been too many of these types of incidents within the past couple of weeks. Too many. Now, Kinsley actually was interviewed recently. Luckily, again, like I said, she did survive. But this story could have ended in a totally different way. Totally different way. So let's hear what she had to say in this interview.
Kid, he walked through his yard and he said he was going to kill the kid. Why did you shoot my daddy and me? He tried to shoot a kid's dad.
That is 6-year-old Kinsley White, who is asking those questions after she took a bullet fragment to her face and went into surgery because of it. Her mom, Ashley Hildebrand, also grazed by a bullet, and her dad is in the hospital, having been shot in the back, allegedly by the neighbor who didn't like the basketball that rolled into his yard. In this primetime exclusive, I want to welcome Ashley and her daughter Kinsley, who join me now live. Ashley, the very first question is, how are you all doing? I can see the two of you, but Kinsley's dad is still in the hospital. How is he?
He's not doing so good. He's got several injuries. He's got his liver's split. His lungs got a piece missing, broken ribs. He's got a big old hole in his back.
And how are you doing and your daughter?
Just trying to get by.
So just FYI here, for those who are just joining, the father is still in apparently critical condition. So he's still in the hospital.
I don't know how to even, I don't know. It's just been all so crazy. It's unbelievable.
I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, I can't imagine it. Can you tell me, Ashley, how, what happened with Kinsley when you went to the hospital?
It was scary. They had to put a like a numbing gel on it and dig the bullet fragment out with a pair of hemostats. And they had.
So she was shot in the face. Let me pull up here so you can see the. So she was shot in the face. Like, this guy shot them with the intent to kill them. Like, I just don't, I don't understand. I really don't get it. All over a basketball.
And they had those hemostats way in her cheek. And I about passed out. It was so gross.
Kinsley, can you hear me okay? I know it's tricky hearing out of a little piece in your ear, but can you hear?
Yes.
How are you doing tonight, sweetheart? You okay?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what happened when that whole thing ended up going on in the neighbor's yard?
So some kids was playing basketball and the ball accidentally went in the yard and he got a gun and he started to shoot somebody's dad, and then he went back inside and got a different gun. Then he shot my daddy and then he shot me.
And then you went to the hospital, right, Kinsley?
Yes.
How do you feel tonight? Are you feeling a little bit better?
Yes.
Yeah. A bit worried about your dad, though, I would imagine, right?
Yes.
So
I just want to ask really quick, for those of you who do have kids, how does this make you feel? Does it make you feel comfortable to leave your kids alone in the yard playing basketball? And what if the ball rolls into someone else's yard? Like, I know for me, I would think I would be scared. I think, the next time this happens, if someone is playing basketball and the ball rolls into a neighbor's yard, do you feel safe going over to the neighbor's yard to get your ball? I asked the same question about the 16-year-old boy who rang the wrong doorbell and was shot in the head. Do you feel safe ringing the wrong doorbell by mistake now? Or what about the woman who was killed. Unfortunately, she did not survive because her and her friends turned into someone's driveway to turn around. Do you feel safe doing that now? I know I've done that multiple times. Do you still feel safe doing that? People have seriously lost it. You are seen as a threat. Very sad.
So, Ashley, what have you been able to explain? I mean, all of this is so hard for us adults to process. What have you been able to explain to Kinsley?
She's been real sketchy about the police and everybody. I've had to explain the good guys, these are bad guys. She's really been scared to go to sleep, eat, anything.
Notice she said that she's been sketchy about the police. And notice it wasn't the police who shot her. Listen to this part again.
Explain the good guys, these are bad guys.
Sorry, here we go.
What have you been able to explain to Kinsley?
She's been real sketchy about the police and everybody. I've had to explain the good guys, these are bad guys.
Okay, so the little girl, the mother said that the little girl is now sketchy about the police and everybody. She's probably traumatized by anyone that would carry a gun because of what happened. Now, I don't know if I would go as far as to say the police are good guys, but I think that is what's happening here with this little girl. So now, like, she may have PTSD. Who knows? Every time she sees someone with a gun, she may feel some kind of way because of what happened to her.
She's really been scared to go to sleep, eat, anything. And I mean,
do you know anything about that neighbor? Is he familiar to you?
No, ma'am. That was the first time we had ever seen him or anything. He had just moved in 2 weeks ago. He was actually renting a room from the guy who was actually renting the house.
Okay, this piece right here is very telling. Let me go back. This is what I was saying about knowing your neighbors.
To explain the good guys, these are bad guys. She's really been scared to go to sleep, eat, anything. And I mean,
do you know anything about that neighbor? Is he familiar to you?
Do you know anything about the neighbor? This is exactly what I was talking about. Listen to this.
No, ma'am. That was the first time we had ever seen him or anything. He had just moved in 2 weeks ago.
Okay. He had just moved in 2 weeks ago. That was the first time that they had ever seen him. So this goes back to what I was saying before about people knowing their neighbors. So this guy apparently, I don't know. I gave you some of his history. But again, it just points to a larger issue, which is that people don't know each other. People don't know the people around them. People don't know the people next door to them. Let's go on.
He was actually renting a room from the guy who was actually renting the house. Well, his girlfriend was renting a room from the guy that was actually renting the house. And he hadn't even been there, I don't even think 2 weeks. He had been there 2 weeks. That's giving him a few days.
So, Ashley, the news broke just a little while ago that, after quite an extensive manhunt for him, he was captured in Hillsborough County in Tampa. That must have been a relief to you. How did you feel when you heard that?
Now, he was on the run. This is what I was talking about earlier. He was definitely on the run if he had made it down to Florida.
Relieved, but I just can't believe he made it all the way to Florida.
I can.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long way, and it's a little surprising he turned himself in as well. Kinsley?
It's not that long of a way. I haven't lived in North Carolina. Like, that drive isn't as long as you think it would be. But the thing is, where is the girlfriend? This is my question, because the article didn't say anything else about the girlfriend other than the fact that she had been abused by him. But where is the girlfriend? Where was the girlfriend when this took place? Where was the girlfriend when he disappeared, when he was on the run? Is anybody talking to her now? Are the officials talking to her and asking her, where could he have gone? Like, what is his background? What do you know about him? There's not a lot that's being said about this incident. Not that much right now. So it's kind of weird to me. I'm over here like, okay, where's the girlfriend? I don't know.
When you heard that the man who was, they were trying to catch him, when you heard that the police caught him, what did you think?
Like nothing.
We made it
Like
a special
nothing.
thing. We made it a special thing. We waited. I was the one who told her that he was in jail.
Thank you for watching. Go to
Okay, so again, just another example that we are definitely, we definitely lack community in this country. Very sad, very troubling. But I have to say, I don't know, man. This particular situation, he hadn't been there for more than 2 weeks, the mom said. To just run outside, like, this is just so bizarre to me, this type of behavior. A ball goes into the yard. Apparently, it wasn't even really his place per se, because they said that it was the girlfriend who was renting a room from the person who was renting the house, apparently. So there's that. But to just charge out like that because someone, their ball accidentally rolled into your yard, and to just shoot them, to come out there and say, I am going to kill you, and to shoot them. I don't understand that behavior. I really don't. Very strange. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Serena said, my bro's a DoorDash driver. After all this, I'm worried something similar might happen to him. Yes. How many times do these drivers that do deliveries, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub drivers, how many times have they gone to the wrong location before? How many times have they dropped off the wrong food? I don't blame it. I would be afraid too. Sean says the vids didn't help. It kept us away from others. Not me. I'd ask neighbors I didn't know if they needed anything by leaving laminated letters with my number. Now my neighbors all love me. It's interesting. Whoever says, Jesus Christ, we used to climb over the fence into our neighbor's yard to get our ball and nothing bad happened. Yeah. When I was little, and I don't advise people doing this today, but when I was little, there was a little game we used to play where we would get on our bikes and we would run up to someone's house and we ring the doorbell and jump on our bikes and ride off. Like, that was like a game, like when I was a kid. I don't recommend that today. I do not. Thank you for the super chat, Loca-Cola. I have a 19-year-old daughter who worries about getting shot, going to concerts on campus and to other friends' homes. I am extremely worried. Yes, particularly with the mass shootings as well. They've become too frequent, in my opinion. I totally hear you. Purple Philosophy says, we don't really know our neighbors that well either, but everyone tends to keep to themselves now around here. That is something I have noticed. When I was growing up, I did feel like there was more community. But as I got older, I don't see that as much anymore. I don't know. Maybe technology has something to do with that. Maybe people are spending more time on social media, on their phones. I don't know. I just noticed that there is a difference compared to how it was when I was growing up. That's for sure. Okay. I want to get into the next story. Now, this is about Li Feng. Li Feng, for those who are not aware, he actually is not a part of The Intercept anymore. So he was a journalist. He was a part of The Intercept. It appears he has left The Intercept and he is now writing, I guess, exclusively for Substack. So he has his own Substack now. Well, I want to refresh your memory. We need to go back. We need to go back to the interview with Mehdi Hasan and Matt Taibbi, where Mehdi Hasan tried to do a gotcha moment on Matt Taibbi, basically saying that he had incorrect information in reference to some of the data that was put out about the Twitter files. If you remember that interview, we don't need to go through that again, but I want to explain how we got to this point now. Well, it was actually Li Fang who actually took it upon himself to explain to people that actually Matt Taibbi was correct and Mehdi Hasan was the one who was incorrect. So Matt Taibbi actually did not make an error in reference to the document that Mehdi Hasan was referring to. But moving forward, Li Fang has taken it upon himself to reveal some things about Mehdi Hasan. And apparently, part of that has to do with plagiarism. Now, he was recently on The Hills Rising to discuss this with Bree and Robbie. I thought this was very interesting. And if you have not seen this, you will see it now. But I want to talk about this because I've had my suspicions about Mehdi Hasan before as his work, like as a journalist. We've talked about it before. I did not know that he also had committed plagiarism. And that is a big no. If you talk to people who are journalists, even when I was in undergrad, plagiarism was a no. And so it's really interesting for someone like Mehdi Hasan to question Matt Taibbi's journalistic integrity, and he is guilty of plagiarism. That is why this is so interesting. So let's go ahead and get into this clip here.
In a recent Substack piece, Li Fang reports that back in January of 2000, MSNBC host Mehdi Hasan authored a column in defense of spanking children. No harm in smacking. That is nearly a word-for-word duplication of the article When to Spank, published 2 years earlier in U.S. News and World Report.
The fact that he even wrote an article about the fact that he wrote like a pro spanking article, this is just so, it's weird and it's bizarre to me. I don't get it. I don't believe in that type of punishment. I don't believe in spanking. This is not to say that I did not get spankings when I was a kid. I did, but I don't believe in it. I don't believe in corporal punishment. And if you're like me, I mean, I remember I got spanked one time at school. And I don't know if schools still do this, but this is when we lived in Germany. I got in trouble. I didn't start it, but I got in trouble. This kid, he was a brat and he pulled my ponytail and I punched him. So both of us were punished because of that. And what they used to do there, and I don't know if they still do this anymore, but at my elementary school, what they used to do is when they did spank, they had a paddle and you were paddled by the principal. So when they would beat you, they beat you in front of other people. So it wasn't like this was in a private space or anything. Both of us got paddled in the cafeteria in front of our peers. I don't believe in corporal punishment. I think it's embarrassing and humiliating. So that is not my thing. But it's interesting that he wrote an article about that.
Here to discuss is author and journalist Li Fang. Welcome, Li.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, this is a wild one. I remember the days when you, me, Mehdi, Glenn used to be all together under one Christmas party roof at the Intercept, and now it seems
that sounds like fun times.
Oh dear!
So much has happened since then. Obviously, let's go back to the beginning of this dispute, which would it be fair to say happened around Taibbi's interview with Mehdi Hasan over the Twitter files. Then spilled out over into some accusations that Mehdi Hasan made about you as you defended Matt Taibbi's Twitter files reporting. And now there's this follow-up reporting on Mehdi Hasan's previous journalistic mistakes, shall we call it. How do you see all of this as playing out?
Look, I think there's a big focus on the TV interview between Taibbi and Mehdi Hasan, but the most serious allegation came after the interview. On Twitter, after that interview, Mehdi Hasan accused Matt Taibbi of perjury, of lying under oath to Congress. That's a felony with prison time. That's what Michael Cohen was convicted of with prison time. That's what Roger Stone was convicted of. That's a very serious offense. And
Right. So I want to pause there and we'll come back in. I'm going to get into this a little bit deeper tonight on my show. But yes, you do have to remember that after that interview with Mehdi Hasan, he actually accused Matt Taibbi of perjury, because when Matt Taibbi testified in front of Congress at that subcommittee hearing, basically he's saying that the error that he pointed out on that interview, or in that interview, basically is the opposite of what was said when he testified in front of Congress. So Mehdi Hasan, in my opinion, with what you see going on right now with Matt Taibbi being threatened to be sent to prison, I feel like it was Mehdi Hasan who stirred the pot. You know, there's always a pot stirrer around. You ever met someone who's just a pot stirrer? It's like they don't really, I don't know. How can I explain it? It's like they start to stir the pot, and it's like they sort of get the ball rolling and then they disappear when things pop off. And that's what I feel like it was with Mehdi Hasan. I feel like that interview that he had with Matt Taibbi was a trap. I said that from day one. I was like, if I was Matt, I would not have done that interview. I felt like that was a trap to get him on something, then to be able to threaten him with jail time, to get people like Matt Taibbi to be quiet, to silence him. So when you hear about this story tonight, I'm going to go in a lot more detail about it tonight because I got a lot of clips and things like that. When you hear about this story tonight, I want you to remember that when we talk about the Congresswoman who is threatening Matt Taibbi, and it's not just her, by the way, I want you to remember that it was Mehdi Hasan who actually stirred the pot. He planted the seeds, so to speak. That's how we got here. Let's go on.
You know, Mehdi made this very scurrilous charge and claimed that Taibbi was wrong when he said that an arm of the Department of Homeland Security was involved with an NGO in contacting Twitter during the 2020 election for censorship actions, for, you know, content moderation policies. And look, I've reported on this even before the Twitter files. I've looked, you know, for weeks at this issue, at, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of documents. And I simply corrected the record. I said that Matt Taibbi, in his congressional testimony, was 100% accurate. I published new documents, new emails. I surfaced old reporting that I've done. You know, I did a very detailed response to this allegation that Matt Taibbi lied under oath, that Mehdi lodged. Rather than a substantive response to my reporting, Mehdi went into the gutter. He started claiming that I was a careerist, that I'm a liar, and, you know, that I'm an Islamophobic bigot, which is the most absurd claim possible. You know.
So Mehdi Hasan started to come after Lee Fong after Lee Fong basically checked him and said, no, this information is not incorrect. So he started to smear Lee Fong, this is not a surprise to me. So of course, Lee Fong decided, okay, let me expose you for what you really are.
Absolutely baseless claim. And, you know, a lot of readers encouraged me to look into Mehdi's career and into his background, that a lot of these claims against me were cases of projection. And that's what I did. You know, at my Substack, I went back into 20 years of Mehdi's writing, you know, finding lots of cases of, I think, very sloppy citation or straight up plagiarism, and the exact type of careerism that I think people find problematic in journalism, that rather than having a principled approach to the news, to journalism, Mehdi has switched his positions and taken whatever kind of value is convenient for advancing his career. You know, someone who claimed to be against abortion and, you know, against abortion rights suddenly flip-flops on that and now demonizes anyone who's anti-abortion as, you know, motivated by white supremacy and racism. I mean, it's a little bit absurd, and I would just encourage anyone to read my Substack, take a look at the allegations. You know, there's a particularly intellectually lazy form of journalism that.
And we're going to take a look at that also as well, because I do want to add something here in reference to what Lee Fong said about Mehdi Hasan basically signing on to issues to help further his career. I do see that. Now, he mentioned how he switched his position or flip-flopped on abortion, but he also flip-flopped on LGBTQ issues. And this is something that MSNBC doesn't want to talk about. A lot of people in liberal media, they don't want to bring it up. But you have to understand too that there was also a time when Mehdi Hasan was actually not in favor of LGBTQ groups. Jimmy Dore revealed that old footage on his show. So I think that's the same thing too. I think Mehdi Hasan has been doing that. Now you have to understand when it comes to plagiarism, there are actually software applications that you can use to see if someone plagiarized their work. And I'll give you an example. Faculty actually use this. So those of you who are in undergrad or grad school, beware. There are faculty members that actually use software. What they'll do is they'll take your paper, or you can do this with an article as well. They run it through the software, and the software will pick up certain words to let them know if there is another document to compare it to that also use the exact same phrasing. Now, with plagiarism, you have to be careful because you can get in trouble for plagiarism by using the exact same wording, but you can also get in trouble for plagiarism by using a quote, but not using proper citations. And proper citations doesn't mean that you just give the author the credit in the bottom of the article and the footnotes. It also means that you use it in a proper way. So even if you don't use the proper format when it comes to the citations, that can also be seen as plagiarism. You have to be very careful. And I know this because I went to grad school and I've written a lot of papers. Okay. I don't care to write any more papers. No more papers, okay? But I've written a lot of papers, and this is something that you cannot be lazy with. When you are citing people, when you are writing, you have to be careful that you are not copying someone word for word. And if you do, it needs to be a quote, and you need to give them credit with proper citations. Now, Mehdi Hasan, who is a journalist, he would know that. He would know that. So I'm really surprised. Lee Fong said he went back 20 years. I'm really surprised. No one caught this before. No one. Let's go on.
That Mehdi kind of specializes in, and I think the plagiarism examples speak to that.
Right. And I think Matt Taibbi in his exchange with Mehdi a little bit tried to, point out, well, while MSNBC was, what did you do to correct the record when MSNBC was saying all sorts of things about Russiagate, for instance, and he tried to say he had nothing to do with that. And I think maybe you or Matt or someone, maybe it was Glenn, someone found some examples of him doing exactly that. So, we're not trying to undermine the guy in a vacuum or something, like go back 20 years ago to find something he did wrong. But he was very much harping on Matt for these, couple errors that Matt acknowledged and then corrected. And then especially the thing you pointed out, it's absolutely true from, looking at what you've reported and others that this, that the two agencies involved, the government agency and the nonprofit, and Mehdi tried to suggest that it was just, well, you transpose the two, but both were involved in this project of flagging tweets on behalf of the government.
No, I find this kind of all very despicable. Look, we all get things wrong in our journalism. I think how we act as journalists is how quickly we move to correct the record and really explain the truth. I mean, it's reporting on these kind of complicated issues can be messy, it can be difficult, but Matt Taibbi in one tweet mixed up one acronym and he quickly corrected the record. Mehdi has engaged in many lies in this whole process. Lying about never talking about the Hunter Biden laptop, he did. Lying about never kind of like reporting on this kind of some of these more scurrilous Russia gate allegations, he did. Yeah. And then the most serious allegation here is that Matt Taibbi lied under oath to Congress. And this is a claim that Mehdi's repeated over and over again. This is perjury. This is serious stuff. This is, after Mehdi made this claim, AOC then retweeted and said, look, let's kind of undermine all of the Twitter files reporting. This.
And that right there goes to show you when AOC did that right there lets you know that the liberal media, the politicians, the Democrat politicians in DC have the backing of the liberal media. For AOC to jump on that bandwagon when she didn't do any research, didn't look up any data, just simply took Mehdi Hasan's word for it and retweeted it. Do you see how dangerous this can be? And now you have someone like Matt Taibbi who is being threatened with being imprisoned because of all of this. But I tell you, certain journalists or commentators, they back and protect the politicians. It happens on the Democratic Party, it happens in the Republican Party. Both networks, the liberal side and the right side, they both do this. They protect the politicians, because if the politicians doesn't have the media on their side, then what do they have?
This is kind of like very petty, personalized attacks, and that aren't true. You know, like this claim that Matt Taibbi got it wrong. I've demonstrably showed that Taibbi was right when talking about CISA, this arm of the Department of Homeland Security that was highly involved in content moderation policies at Facebook and Twitter and other social media companies. You know, really highly embedded in these firms and pressuring them on a regular basis. And Mehdi, you know, quickly claiming that this was a lie and this undermined the entire thesis of the Twitter files. Look, you know, I've reported on Twitter documents. Many other reporters have. I think this is a kind of juvenile attempt to obscure the actual contents of the revelations, the reporting. This attempt to discredit all the journalism because of one error in one tweet. You know, I find it very distasteful.
Yeah, Lee, I got to say, I found your reporting on the Twitter files in particular one of my favorite reads. It was so substantive. And one of the most frustrating aspects of watching the interview with Taibbi and Mehdi was the failure of Mehdi to really engage in the substance and the value, the broader value of the Twitter files, despite any mistake that might exist here or there. So to that end, I want to ask you, very shortly after that interview, of course, Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk seemed to get into their own dispute about the nature of Substack and Matt Taibbi's relationship with them. And in a Twitter Live last week, Elon Musk said that all good things basically have to come to an end and that the Twitter files is basically over. I know that Matt Taibbi was planning before that to hire journalists to continue the work on the files, including Aaron Mate. And I believe you have now left The Intercept and are working over at Substack. Are there any plans to continue reporting on the Twitter files?
Good question.
Yeah, I have a lot of research. I visited Twitter for a few days in late December and early January, and I was able to write down and copy a lot of information. So I have more stories coming. I've reported on the Pentagon's kind of covert ops influence operations. They had this gigantic network of fake accounts and fake news sites on the Middle East that were parroting the Pentagon's line and trying to shape Middle East opinion with complete secrecy, and that Twitter had full knowledge of this operation. They even created a special kind of bot, this whitelist bot that kind of amplified these accounts. At the same time, Twitter was telling the public that they were doing everything they could to shut down every state-backed influence operation, that anytime any government does this, they'll shut it down. No, they were working as a concierge service for the Pentagon to spread the Pentagon's propaganda on wars in Yemen and Syria and beyond. And I've also looked at how pharmaceutical companies were lobbying Twitter for censorship, that a pharmaceutical funded group had backdoor access and were shaping some of the content decisions in terms of shadow banning and blocking certain accounts that were critical of certain COVID policies. Yep. But I'm just getting started. There's going to be more there. I can't really speak towards what Elon Musk will or won't do. It kind of doesn't matter for my reporting. I'd love to have more access, but we'll see, TBD. But I have more material and more reporting to come.
Well,
it's not even so much about Matt Taibbi, so to speak. It's about the information that was revealed. That's what it's really about. Now, I told you, Lee Fong has that Substack, and he actually published about this. I want to share this because he goes into more detail in this Substack article. So I think this is important to see in reference to Mehdi Hasan's plagiarism. So the name of this article, if you want to read the full article, is called Mehdi Hasan Plagiarized Pro Spanking Column. So again, this is Lee Fong. This is on Substack. So I want to start with this piece right here. Before he was shouting down opponents with ad hominem slurs, Hasan was passing off others' reporting as his own, sometimes without any citation at all. This piece right here, I'm sorry. Again, I majored in broadcast journalism and English, and this is a big no-no for me. He said sometimes without any citation at all. That is a no. Period. You do not do that. And what kills me is whoever the editors were for these outlets, how did they not catch that? Or did they see it and they just chose to ignore it? People can sue you for that. People can sue you. If you don't know, people can sue you for plagiarizing their work. Let's go on. In one of his first attempts at journalism, Hasan authored a column in defense of spanking children, No Harm in Spanking, in January 2000. That is nearly a word-for-word duplication of the article When to Spank, published 2 years earlier in the U.S. News and World Report. So not only did he plagiarize, but he plagiarized a major outlet. And no one caught this. The similarities are apparent from the beginning of Hasan's piece, smacking. Let me make this bigger. Yeah, I like that better. Now I just have to scroll down again. The similarities are apparent from the beginning of Hasan's piece. Anti-smacking crusaders have consistently relied upon inconclusive studies to make sweeping overgeneralizations about the dangers of smacking. He began his piece for The Independent, a London-based newspaper. Let's go on. It's virtually identical to a line used by co-authors Lynn Rossellini and Anna Mulrin. In their news article on the topic for U.S. News and World Report, anti-spanking crusaders relied on inconclusive studies to make sweeping overgeneralizations about spanking dangers. Maureen and Rossellini wrote. So in short, Hasan is a fraud. There's no telling how many times he's done this, how many times he's plagiarized other people. And I don't know who Maureen and Rossellini are, but if they are finding out about this now from what Li Fong has said, I really think they should try to pursue some type of legal action here. So Mehdi Hasan, I want to say this, he's not a journalist. He is a fraud. He goes on to say the Hasan piece titled No Harm in Smacking goes on to copy every single line from the U.S. News and World Report article, save for occasionally swapping out or adding a few words in each sentence. Hasan wrote in 1998, even the American Academy of Pediatrics toned down its blanket injunction against smacking, though it still takes a dim view of the practice. In fact, an AAP conference on corporal punishment in 1996 concluded that in certain circumstances, smacking or spanking may be an effective backup to other forms of discipline. There's no evidence that a child who is spanked moderately is going to grow up to be a criminal or antisocial or violent. That's coming from S. Kenneth Schonberg, a pediatrics professor co-chairing the meeting. In fact, the reverse may be true, yada, yada. Now he's comparing it to the U.S. News World Report. This week, even the American Academy of Pediatrics is expected to tone down its blanket injunction against spanking, though it still and I'm not going to read this all over again, but you see, this is virtually the same. They even go on to say there is no evidence that a child who is spanked moderately is going to grow up to be a criminal or antisocial or violent, says S. Kenneth Schonberg, the pediatrics professor who co-chaired the conference. Pretty much word for word. Let's go on. Hasan continued, no study demonstrates that spanking a child leads to abuse. Indeed, it may be the other way around. Parents who end up abusing their children may misuse all forms of discipline, including spanking. Let's go down to the comparison. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but U.S. World Report. But no study demonstrates that spanking a child leads to abuse. Indeed, it may be the other way around. Guys, this is almost word for word. And no one caught this. Not one person. And we probably wouldn't even know about this if Mehdi Hasan didn't try to punk Li Fong. We probably wouldn't know about this. Let's go on here. Jesus Louise. So he even included the PDF file so you can download the articles. You can download Mehdi Hasan's article, No Harm in Smacking, and you can download the U.S. News article, When to Spank. The Hasan column on spanking is a clear violation of simple ethics code outlined by the Society for Professional Journalists, which is to always attribute every single time. And you don't have to go to journalism school to know that. Again, we learned this in undergrad, learned that in high school as well. You do not plagiarize. Come on, man. What's that, Bryce? LMAO with the PDF files? I know. He included it all. He's like, receipts. Hey, you got to have it nowadays, right? You got to have it nowadays. The articles are not hosted online anywhere publicly. I found them via a newspaper archive, so I copied them above. Hasan's defense of spanking came in response to a letter from Peter Saunders, the director of the UK Nationals Association for People Abused in Childhood. Saunders had written a letter in the Independent advocating for the government to enact more restrictions on the physical punishment of children. Later that year, again in the pages of the Independent, Hasan lifted passages from another writer. The Hasan piece, Arab Bantustans, uses passage from the 94% Solution, an article by Jeff Halper in the Middle East Research and Information Project. And he gives examples of this here. We'll read a little bit. Hasan wrote, today, according to the Israeli Housing Ministry's own figures, 195 exclusively Jewish settlement housings, some 400,000 Israelis are sprinkled across the occupied territories. Let's go down to Halper's article. Today, 195 exclusive Jewish settlements housing some 400,000 Israelis are sprinkled across the occupied territories. Again, pretty much word for word. Let me go down. Occasionally, though, Hasan's sloppiness shined through in his work. In his first book, which valorized the life of centrist Labour Party leader Ed Miliband, Hasan used scare quotes to describe Ralph Miliband, writing that during the Second World War, he was generally the only Jew and certainly the only stateless Belgian-born French-speaking LSE student among the enlisted men, and the only one trying to set aside time to read Marx's Das Kapital. There is no indication where this sentence came from. It's only upon further investigation that I found that it was taken directly from an article published by journalist Andy McSmith in The Independent a year prior to the publication of Hasan's book. And he worked for The Independent. No one caught this. Oh my God. Much of the rest of the book is taken from other histories published about the family and contains little new reporting. Mehdi, you know you really messed up with this one. You really messed up with this one. He goes on to say he spent much of his days in the UK cozying up to establishment Labour Party leaders. His book on Ed Miliband is far from the only example. Now, as an aspiring U.S. pundit, he falls over himself, lavishing praise on President Joe Biden and repeating the Democratic Party line on any subject of the day. It's no wonder that just as it becomes fashionable among many liberals to defend the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security from critical reporting about agency overreach, Hasan leaps at the opportunity to lie about Taibbi's testimony and to smear every journalist who has engaged with the Twitter files documents. He is a careerist. So what he does is he kind of just swings with the position that is popular at that time. Bingo. One of the quickest ways, I think, to move up in journalism, to move with the positions that are popular at that time, which means you really stand for nothing. Basically. He goes on to say Hasan is more than happy to bend any principle in service of his career. The greatest such example is Hasan's attempt to work at the Daily Mail, seen as a British equivalent to Fox News. On television, Hasan castigated the immigrant bashing, woman hating, Muslim smearing, NHS undermining, gay baiting Daily Mail, clearly making the case that the paper is composed of unreconstructed racists. That prompted the British outlet to publish Hasan's own application letter, in which Hasan pleaded for a columnist position. Again, he is a careerist. We don't know what Mehdi really stands for. We don't know what Mehdi Hasan really believes. What we do know, what we have seen, is that Mehdi stole other journalists' work, that Mehdi follows the popular position so that he can climb the career ladder in journalism, and that Mehdi is a fraud. That's what we know. I'm going to put the link to this article in the chat so you guys can read the rest of it. It's pretty long. Hold on. This is Lee Fong's article. Definitely finish that article. Check that out. And follow Lee Fong on Substack, because he's doing like great things there now. I'm glad he left The Intercept. You know, I don't like it. I don't like The Intercept. You guys know how I feel about that. It's cray. It is cray. What is this purple philosophy? They do here, Sabby, in Mississippi. Oh, they do have corporal punishment in Mississippi. Baza says that little brat was me. Were you the person who pulled my ponytail, Baza? Was that you? Was it you? Hot Flash Vegan said this is a full-on Mehdi smackdown. Yes, he deserves it. After everything he put people through. What is this? Patrick, he used to talk like he was a jihadist. Now he supports gay rights. I guess that radical Islam thing was just a phase. Yeah, like that was something that was revealed, at least to me, that was revealed on Jimmy Dore show when he played the video clip of how he actually felt about the gay community. So we don't know who Mehdi is or what he wants to be. Will the real Mehdi Hasan please stand up? That's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. All right. It is almost time for me to head out, guys. I will say I don't want to forget this because I want to make sure I shout this out. So I don't want to forget. I think it's under the Nick and CJ one. Not that one. This one. Guys, so we have been getting a lot of compliments on the thumbnails. Those are not done by us. That is Erin's work. She's doing a really great job. And so what we do is we have like fundraisers for Erin so that we can pay her for her work. You can help us with this by giving us or sending money at our Venmo at Revolutionary Blackout or Cash App, Mutual Aid Forever. That helps us pay Erin for her work because she's just been doing phenomenal things. I do not have Erin's skills, okay? I do not have those skills. All right, guys, it is time for me to head out. If you want to see more Sabby, I'll be live on my channel in just about an hour, 8 p.m. Eastern time. I have a lot to talk about. A lot of news stories happened this week, so I'll be over there to cover that. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into this threat against Matt Taibbi. We're going to talk about what's happening with the Huru movement now that Amali Yeshitala has been charged. I interviewed him a while back, actually, so I really wanted to make sure I covered that as well. We're also going to talk about this new story about Hunter Biden, which is pretty pretty tasty. This new update is pretty tasty about Hunter Biden. And the other story, what's the other one? Hunter Biden, Matt Taibbi threatened, Amalia Shatella, and I don't know why I can't remember the other one. That's not good. That is not good. I should probably know what I'm talking about tonight. I should probably know. Oh, yes. Okay. RFK Jr.'s appearance on Tucker Carlson talking about socialism for the rich, and a recap of his announcement, because I covered his announcement in person on the ground. So if you want more savvy, check me out over there. 8 p.m. Eastern time. I am heading out. I think Mehdi is probably really quiet right now, I think, on Twitter since this information has come out. But yeah, we don't know who Mehdi wants to be. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.